To another episode of Lights, Camera, Live, where we shine a spotlight on the best and brightest marketers in the industry so you could take your business from unknown to unforgettable. Now, we're doing another live shopping segment. We're bringing back the Julianna White back to the show so that way you can understand what it takes to be an extraordinary on-air host. Because let's be honest, it's more than just demoing a product. There's so many facets, so many things that come into play when you're developing or run a show, when you're demoing a product, when you're engaging with the audience, all the things. So she's here today to reveal the core skills every brand is looking for in an on-air host. And let's be honest, some brands who are diving into this for the very first time don't know what it is that they want. And so you have to tell them what your expectations are as well as an on-air shopping host. Plus, Julianna is going to reveal insider tips on booking your first gig and conquering live television's chaos with battle-tested strategies to stay cool under pressure. And I absolutely know that she has some tips there. So having said that, let's welcome her onto the show. Julianna, how are you?
I am good. I love that you said that, battle tested.
Yes.
I mean, it truly is, a feat to be able to book these jobs and to work in this industry. And I love sharing the tips. So I'm glad to be here with you.
You got to share the tips. I mean, it's one of those things, again, you still have to stay calm under pressure. Everyone else off camera can go running around, but you're like, you're right there. There is no walking off set.
No, you don't know what's going on behind the cameras, whether you're in studio, whether you're in a guest room like I am here and where I live stream a lot of things. There's a lot that goes into it, but you have to stay calm, cool, collected, and prepared under pressure.
It's one of those things where I feel like sometimes I've even just had to master the poker face or just have my focal point just like, I'm just looking at this and everything else that happens in my peripheral does not matter.
Yeah. And there's been some times where you just can't. You have to break character. You have to own it. And that's what makes you relatable too. Like, just a really quick story. I was working for a tech company, a supply chain company with robotics, and something just went wrong. And we had the funniest moment where we just owned it and said, listen, we're live. Something just went down. And it was funny. You collect yourself and, the audience really gets in on that liveness of the moment, which I kind of love.
I remember when I was growing up, I would always watch America's Funniest Home Videos with my family. Do you remember that? Am I just the only one that remembers this? Okay.
Yes.
But I loved it every time they would show the on-air bloopers with like reporters trying to report on the weather, but then their umbrella turns inside out. Something happens. A newspaper flies because it's so windy and you're just like, oh my gosh, did that really just happen? And I miss all that.
And you and the audience are in on like a little inside joke that, it's live TV. Things happen. You can't take yourself too seriously. And it becomes a really funny, special moment in most instances.
In most instances. Actually, some of my guests, one of my guests, it was so funny because she had been on a couple of times and I just started making like little blooper clips. And it was like a birthday gift. I was like, something to make you laugh.
Goodness.
It's okay to be imperfect. This is who we are. And she absolutely loved it. So it's good. All right, so if you're just joining us in today's episode, we're going to unveil the secrets to becoming a successful live shopping on-air host. And so for those of you that have been following Lights, Camera, Live, you know that I absolutely love producing events for clients. And I had the wonderful opportunity to work with Julianna, who's an absolute quintessential pro. And I was like, I need to introduce you to my audience because working with you was just magical. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey of how you made your way into the industry?
I appreciate you saying that. Those events, Stephanie knows what she's doing. She makes me feel completely safe and taken care of when I go live. And, there is that chaos going on behind the camera. So I appreciate that. But how I got into the industry, my resume is a little crazy. It's all over the place, honestly. I started actually in NASCAR. So I was a reporter in NASCAR for a few years. I never even watched a race before I got this job, fell in love with it, but also fell in love with being in front of the camera, talking, interviewing people, being interviewed. And it's so funny because I am a little bit of an introvert outside of all of this. So my husband thinks it's funny. Get in front of the camera, you turn it on. So I always knew that's where I wanted to be. After that, I got an opportunity to I worked my way up to becoming the co-anchor of a morning newscast in Charlotte, North Carolina. And now I work for a ton of different brands, mostly with L'Occitane on QVC and TSC in Canada. I also work with Wayfair, companies like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A in their internal video departments. And I freelance with a lot of other companies in the Atlanta, Georgia area, the Philadelphia area, sometimes in New York. So going from NASCAR to news to QVC, Stephanie, we talked a little bit about it off camera. It's been really awesome being able to choose, say yes, and say no to certain opportunities because I paid my dues a little bit and I've become more confident in a lot of different ways in front of the camera. So my resume is all over the place, but I love that I get to create my own schedule and continue hosting in front of the camera.
See, that's one of the reasons why. For those of you that are, you're thinking about it, you're not quite sure, I would say that's definitely one of the benefits. You get to work with some amazing brands. You learn a lot. You get that camera confidence. And wouldn't you agree, Juliana, that confidence, it's one of those things that it extends to all areas of your life. So not only just on camera, but, if you're meeting someone for the very first time, your parent-teacher conference, you're like, I'm confident about my little girl. But I also find that, so my daughter, she's 8, and I see that it starts to rub off on her as well. And I think it's because she sees mama on camera a lot. I mean, your daughter probably has to feel the same way where she's not shy. Like you're in a meeting, she's like, hi, hi.
She becomes the meeting for a moment every time I have her on my lap. She's 1.5. But you're so right. That confidence can, rub off on other people around you. And in those situations, as a host, one of the most important things that I've learned over the years, whether you are anchoring the news or talking to race car drivers, is active listening. And I think that active listening really becomes confidence because you know exactly what they're saying and you can think ahead to that next question or maybe think ahead to that next item that you want to talk about in a QVC broadcast. Active listening to yourself and to the people that you're talking to definitely can create confidence.
It's interesting that you say that because have you ever heard that saying where it's like you have 2 ears, one mouth, use them accordingly? And they say a lot these days, most people don't listen to what the other person is saying. They're just waiting for an opportunity to jump in and talk. And I feel like when you're on camera, when you're newscasting or if you're interviewing someone, you do have to block out everything else that's happening and really be in tune with them. And I feel like that's rare these days because sometimes you could go to a coffee shop and someone will just be looking at their phone like, and it's a big, huge disconnect. And I think that's another soft skill that some people don't realize that you gain as an on-air shopping host.
And I'm not going to say this in a mean way because I am as well, but we're all a little selfish. With social media, it's all about the likes. It's all about being on top of the latest video craze or things like that. But you need to, and I stole this from somebody, I don't know who it was, but it was you need to learn to listen and you listen to learn. We're not going to learn if we are shutting our 2 ears out and we can't hear what's going on around us, what the person is saying to us. You need to maintain that eye contact. And you're not going to get better and learn more unless you have your ears open to receive all of that content and to create a good conversation that people will want to watch, whether it's just yourself on Instagram Live, hosting that way, because a lot of selling is done on social media platforms now in that live space. But even if you're sitting on a couch with somebody having an interview type conversation, the audience isn't going to like it when they know you're not listening to anybody else. You're just talking to hear your own voice.
That's my beef with pre-recorded content. You know how they're like, we want everything to be perfect, so we're gonna live stream pre-recorded content and act as if it's real. Yeah. But then it's like people ask you questions, and then you've had to have seen this before because then the on-air shopping host just doesn't acknowledge the audience, right? Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, it's fake. And I feel like it completely creates this disconnect between the host, the audience, the trust, and all of that. So I know, I love live streaming.
It's so true. And that conversation, whether you're typing on your computer or your phone, that's what makes people interested because you're caring about them. Again, we're all a little bit selfish. We are human. We want to be the center of attention, live in our own movie of our lives.
Yeah.
So to be able to have that interaction is so important, whether it's live selling or whether it's hosting in another capacity.
Yeah. So shout out to Hank. Hank, here you are. We're giving you
There you
love.
go.
Welcome to the show. Very, very happy to have you here. All right. So, Juliana, let's talk about like personal brand or just branding in general. Because you had this really interesting story about like when you were in the newscasting field, what was it like there? And how are you building your brand now in comparison?
So when I was in the news, it was so interesting because it was the first time I had a full-time contract job I was in it for 3.5 years. And it was awesome. The benefits, the excitement of being, the lead of a newscast every single morning. The hours were one thing that was an issue. But another thing was I wasn't able to freelance. I wasn't able to work with other companies. I wasn't able to, promote brands on social media, which I know that's starting to change in the news industry and Anchor is starting to branch out. But I was not able to do that. And it was kind of a bummer because as someone who worked in NASCAR, but I also worked with QVC in the past and I worked with all of these different brands. I was able to be Julianna. Able to be myself in those situations and I wasn't being kind of held back personality wise. And in the news, it was a morning news station. I was able to have some personality, but I wasn't able to venture out. And when I talk about, creating your own brand, that doesn't mean you need to have like a logo and you need to stay in your lane and choose something that you are passionate about, but you need to stay in that space. I think, what we put on our social media, what we put out to our audience is so important to curate it just a little bit. And you need to know your audience. So when you're creating a brand, I mean that in the sense of your personality. You're the star of this all. If you want brands to work with you, you want to stand out and not, be, I don't want to say fake, but a little bit of held back, contracted, if you will. And that's been so fun for me because the brands that I work with now hired me because of who I was and who I put out there on social media, in my reels, in my resume. I didn't hold back.
Yeah. And these days you are working with other news anchors. Are you helping them make the transition? Was that you or is that someone else?
I have done that. I've mentored a lot of newscasters,
Yeah.
and I have helped two young women in particular kind of do what I didn't do. Look out for myself, sign things where, you sign away some of your image rights for a short amount of time. And sometimes that's good. If you want to be a broadcaster, you want to go from the small market to the big market to the top, you have to do that. But when we're talking about hosting and anchoring can be very, very different. And I see myself as a freelance host now. I love the news. I am obsessed with the news. I love to know everything going on in the world. But I also have interests that vary. I love the beauty industry. I'm a parent of a little one, so I love having those in my brand as well. So I don't limit myself anymore. And, your audience wants to see your personality. They want to see who you are and what sets you apart. They don't want to see a talking head all of the time. They want someone a little bit more relatable.
This is exactly why I have you on the show. No, it's one of those things like this is why I like to have different guests on the show because I could talk about live streaming all day, every day, but it's nice to get a different perspective on the other side of the camera. In fact, like I didn't know that Hank has done TV and radio. He says this is definitely a new element. It's interesting hearing your perspective on this. Like I'm curious, Hank, if you were limited as far as if you're a radio personality, are you also within the boundaries of your contract? You can't promote certain things because you're also representing the news station. So I'd be curious if you just want to drop that in there. But Juliana,
And it
wait.
breaks my heart sometimes, Stephanie. I'm so sorry. But there were a few situations where I was number one going to make a lot of money, and they were so right up my alley of who I am. And when you know who you are and you're able to show that, it is such a game changer. And I had to turn them down. There were 3 different things that I had to turn down that I can think of that were game changers that I was not able to take on. That now, I mean, I absolutely would have, but it was really tough.
I mean, can you go back and be like,
I
hey,
wish.
does it?
I wish. They were all live events. I
Oh,
love
okay.
live events, and they were, live then was a little bit different than live now. You're able to, sit in your guest room and live stream an event and be there. But yeah, times have changed, which I'm glad about.
Got it. And so Hank responded back to us. He says, absolutely, there's a little bit of limitations. Even if you crack a joke relating to the product in a lighthearted way, there are consequences. Oh, that's true.
Mhm.
I've been in a lot
Yeah.
of, so I've worked in a creative agency before, and there was always media training. There are things that you can and you
Hmm.
cannot say. And even now, when we do product launches, there are things that you can and cannot say. You either have to be 100% factual. There is no
Hmm.
like wiggle room or any of that stuff,
Yeah.
especially if it's going to be your C-level executives. So that's always interesting. So
Yeah.
having said that, Juliana, like we've talked about like your journey from newscasting to now on air and how you're mentoring other others in the industry that are looking to get into this. My question for you is, well, how do you find these on-air shopping hosts? Because I feel like I see a couple of things
Hmm.
on LinkedIn, but they're like part-time positions. They're minimum wage type things, which I know I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, they're trying to set the standard, but this has been around for a while. And so where do you go? How do you find out? Do they reach out to you? Do you have a talent agency? Like spill the tea.
I'm going to be totally honest with you. And here's the thing. I'm still actively looking for jobs myself as well. That's what the beauty is of being a freelance host. I have a main job which is with L'Occitane on QVC, but I'm able to pull from different companies and say, "Oh, that sounds cool. I'm going to submit myself." Transparency, I do have agents who find me opportunities and jobs, but most recently I have found the jobs myself, and they have turned into really great opportunities. I was talking with a, I guess he's a producer. He's in a marketing team with a company. I've worked with them 5 different times now. And it was from an opportunity that I found on one of the websites that I will tell you about. And it was awesome because there was no real middleman. And I got to form that relationship, and it's working so well. Working with him again. He just texted me, said, "Do you want to work with this company?" And I said, "Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. That's right up my alley." So, all of that being said, I do have an agent. Yes, if that's the route you want to go for, make sure you do your research. You never have to pay to sign with an agent. Do your research. Make sure you are with somebody reputable, because I know a lot of people make that mistake as well. They say, "Oh, this person thinks I'm pretty and I can be a commercial model and I can be a host, but I need to pay them $1,000 to be on the website." That's not how it works with reputable agencies. So just make sure you do your due diligence and find someone who's going to work with you.
Wait, how do you
Not,
know that somebody's a reputable agency though? Like if especially if you're completely brand new,
mhm,
how do you know that
yeah.
this might be a little sketch?
Well, Google has a lot of resources with that now. But as someone who's worked in the TV industry since I was 17 years old, I'm in my mid 30s now, so it's been a long time. I've signed with a lot of different agents. And one of the biggest helpers for me to distinguish who was reputable and who wasn't in the age of, Google didn't answer all of the questions. I asked for help. And I have a lot of people reach out to me and ask for help, and I will be honest with them. So it's really great to find someone who can be almost a mentor to you, to say, "Well, maybe that's not the right choice. I'm going to steer you in the right direction." I just did that with someone the other day. Their child wants to get into a little bit of acting. And she texted me, and I was like, "Okay, I'll give you a list." So I helped them. So make sure you ask for help, because if Google can't answer, you need to have someone in your corner who's willing to say yes or no. But you need to read the reviews and just go on their Facebook page and make sure you're
I feel
making the
like you
right
need to be writing
choice.
a book right now, Juliana, and just talking about like in my experience,
Yeah.
this is how you would research it. This is how you know it's reputable. We're gonna get your ebook, your lead magnet, whatever. We're gonna get that squared away because I
I
mean, if people
should.
are already calling you, obviously there's a need, right?
Hmm.
And so we've talked
Yeah.
about how you've been able to land jobs, gigs from an agent that you've worked with, how to make sure that they're reputable. Some you've actually found yourself, but we really didn't talk about like where exactly. Is there like a LinkedIn for on-air shopping hosts, or like I don't know. I'm so dating it. I'm like
Yeah.
monster.com. Like what like what's out there?
You can find jobs there.
Really?
More often than not, when you look at the job Indeed, LinkedIn, I don't know, is Monster still a
I know,
thing?
that's why
But
I was like, wait a second.
those job focused websites, you can find those hosting jobs there. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be part time or contractual. So I like to look at a few different websites, and I'm going to tell you my insider scoop where I have actually been paid for jobs that I found on these websites. Backstage.com, which you do have to pay a fee, but you write it off on your taxes. And sometimes you do have to put a little bit of money forward in order to find these opportunities. So I'm just going to tell you, you do have to pay minimal amounts for these. I have made that money back. And like I said, I write them all off on my taxes. So it's worked out in my benefit. Backstage.com has a lot of great opportunities for hosting and camera jobs. I see a lot of QVC companies post on backstage.com. Another place that I actually did just see a QVC main hosting job was on actorsaccess.com. Yes, that is for actors. Yes, it's for commercial modeling, but you can also find in your region who is booking jobs for hosting gigs as well. That's where I found the company that I just booked, going on my 6th time working with them. And I just submitted an audition yesterday through actorsaccess.com. So that's another great avenue. And then finally, I have 3 websites. My husband he's like, which one are you on right now looking for jobs? Because it's so easy to submit because I've kind of had it all figured out there. And sometimes I book the job, so it's convenient. TVjobs.com. If you want to get into news, that is where you want to be as well. All of these you have to pay at some point. But I mean, when you get these gigs in that freelancing hosting world, those are some of the most reputable. They're all looked at by someone who can find out if these companies are legit. So that work is taken care of as well. So you have to do some of the work to get
Yeah.
the work, which works out in your benefit.
I love that. Okay, so then you said that you submitted an audition. What does that mean exactly? You submitted an audition. Was it like did they give you a script? You read
Mhm.
it or you give them a sizzle reel? Like how does that work?
I start off usually, and we can talk about reels because they're so important and no one knows how to make
Yeah, I'm like,
reels.
wait a second. What do you mean?
Reels are so difficult. That's something I've helped a lot of different people with over the years. But I have a sizzle reel. It's a 30-second like rapid fire. Here's some of the work that I've done. So it's a visual resume. And then I have a longer form reel as well. So I submit those at the beginning through all of these avenues, or if it's word of mouth as well. You have to make those connections. My current QVC gig is through a connection and through somebody who I just knew and said, hey, I heard they're looking for something. So you always have to have your reel ready. You have to have your resume ready, maybe a headshot as well. I just got new headshots done to kind of brand myself a little bit more. So you have to have those things all ready. And once they look at that, if you are somebody that their client says, oh, they would work great for our brand, they have the perfect image, they have the right cadence of their voice, let's see what they look like when they're talking about our company. So they'll send a script over. The one I sent for yesterday was very scripted. And so I asked, can I read this off of a teleprompter? I have a teleprompter app. So I can knock it out really fast and speak in my own voice, but I don't have to memorize anything. So those are kind of my favorite types of auditions. If it
Wow.
falls through, I don't really have to memorize and do a ton of work. But I love reading teleprompter too. That's something that I can say is one of my strengths. Another audition that I filmed earlier this week was basically live selling, sell a product. Nothing scripted. I have to go on my own and be creative in that way. So there's all different types of auditions. I had 2 very, very different ones this week. And one of them, I'm waiting back, but I made the top couple. The casting director emailed me and said, just wait until they make the final decision. But
Got it.
auditioning is tough. But yeah, have to do it.
I'm so like intrigued now. Okay, so like in my head, I'm like writing things in the background. So you need to have your resume ready, headshots that are updated, but also the
Mhm.
reels. And I mean
Yeah.
that in and of itself, you talked about like you have to put in the work in order to get the work. And so you're making these
Mhm.
investments when you're signing up for memberships over at backstage.com and all these other things. For your sizzle reel, like how often do you update that, if at all? Is it you're like I did it once, or is it a yearly thing just like your headshots?
At least a year. Sometimes I update my reel. I have a main reel that I'll pull some clips from. If there's a company where I say they don't need to see all the news stuff, they don't need to see all of this, that, the other thing, I'll just pull from my files and create a whole new reel. They
You are
need to be
so organized.
engaging.
I am like, I love how
I've
you're
been
like, I
doing this
have
for so long.
this, and you're like, here it is.
Well, and Stephanie, the thing is, it is a lot of work, but
Yeah.
once you have your format of things you can pull from, now that you've done all of the work, all of the clipping of everything, and you know where you're going to submit, it becomes so much easier over time. It is a part of your job. It's just something you have to do. But once you put in the majority of the work, get your headshots, get your website, get your reel, then submitting is easy. Then you get to
Oh,
work if you get those jobs. If you do all of the preparation the right way, it just cuts down on your time in the future.
I'm
So
so,
once you have your reel,
yeah.
I created a different one the other day, but it was from clips that I already had. And if I have a really good show or a really good job, I will get that content immediately and
Yeah.
I will update my reel. People want to know what you currently look like. They want to know that you are working. So that's why it is, really worth it to update your reel every 6 months, I would say.
I am literally like, Juliana, if you are not out there coaching and mentoring people, like if this is not a service on your website, I just want to jump through this camera right now. I'm like, you have the knowledge and the experience. People would pay for this. I mean, honestly, I'm now seeing a rise of UGC content creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
some of them, like, they're not even on camera, they're just demonstrating how they take photos and whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
while you were talking,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of took a peek at backstage and I saw that they had for actors, for
Mm-hmm.
voiceover artists, there's creative freelancers and crew, but there's also influencers and content creators. And I was like,
Yep.
Juliana, like, I don't even know why I never even thought about this. For me personally, like, I've done LinkedIn courses. I've done
Mm-hmm.
different webinars and things of that sort. And they usually just find me through LinkedIn. And so it was more inbound. So they would just come
Yep.
in. I wasn't really like going out there and applying for things, but now you're completely opening up my world, and like my facial reactions are so genuine because I'm like, no way, like no way, no way.
And when you get to the point where it is word of mouth, it is someone saying, "Oh, where did that person come from? I would love to use them for this, that, and the other thing." It becomes so much easier. But unfortunately, you have to figure out how to find that first opportunity to open the
Yeah,
doors. Maybe you haven't worked in the hosting world. Maybe you've never done the user generated content and you've never had an insight. There's a way to create your own reel. There's a way to put in the work to um,
wait, so
fake
are
it
you
till you make
editing
it.
your own reel too?
I do. I have an agent who does that, but I like having a little bit more
You
control.
are so talented. Okay, so for those of you that are watching, Hank, she and I were even talking about like how before, she was an on-air host, and then at some point she had to produce it herself. And now she's telling me she's like editing her own videos. My friend, you are beyond
Yes.
talented. I'm just like, look at you. You're like, I'm going to take
Oh,
ownership of my career and I'm going to choose the jobs that I want to do on my schedule. Like, hello, you're amazing.
I never thought about it like that. But you're right. And maybe it's coming from news where I did have to learn how to produce a little bit. I wrote a lot of my own content, had to upload my own clips and videos of stories. Um, but I like to do those kinds of things. I like being creative, and maybe that is not you at all. You just say, I want to be in front of the camera. I want to be a host. I don't want to
Yeah.
edit, produce all of these things. You have to get to the point where you start to disperse the jobs behind the scenes a little bit more. But until then, you have to edit, you have to film yourself, you have to write some scripts to create a reel because no one's going to hire you if they don't know what you do. or
That
what
is
you
very
can
true.
do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so talented. And shout out to Hank. He just said, "Is being cosmetically pleasing a plus?" Which, I mean, I'll be honest. And you and I talked about this the last time you were on the show, and you were saying that there are brands that are looking for different personalities, different age demographics, and it's one of those things where depending on the brand, right? They have a vision of who they're looking for, and not everyone looks like me, and not everyone looks like Juliana, and so it's just an opportunity for you to put yourself out there. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. And, maybe, yes, in the past and now too, to be an anchor, to be a host, you have to look a certain way. But the audience doesn't need that anymore. And you're starting to see things change. When you go live on Instagram and you're doing a story for a company, they're looking for someone who is a little bit more relatable to the audience that they're speaking to. You look at content creators, you look at people in commercials and video content that a lot of the companies are putting out. It's much, much, much more diverse than it ever was, which is very exciting. And I said this the last time I was on, there's space for all of us because
Yeah,
as long as you're going to put in the work and you are doing your due diligence as a host and you're good at that, it doesn't really matter what you look like because there's a company who is looking for you.
very true. Yeah, don't change yourself. Be you. Be true to you. Having said that, Juliana, how do you actually stand out? Because you had mentioned you've applied for a couple of opportunities and
Mhm.
now you're just waiting to hear back. How do you size up the competition? If there is competition, how do you make sure that your submission is memorable? Like what's that? What do you do?
I know that when I try really hard to be someone that I'm not, I won't get a job. And if a company isn't looking for Juliana, who I am and my personality, then it is what it is, but I have no regrets. I have had regrets when I try to be someone that I'm not. So, number one, be your unique self. Be engaging, be dynamic, be prepared in a way where you can say, I am the right person for the job. Why not me? And that's how I've landed all of my jobs. I mean, I am who I am. My reel, the first clips are always something that's a little quirky. I like to joke around. I don't take myself too seriously. Yes, I work really, really hard to be able to speak the way that I do when I'm working with all of the companies that I work with. But who I am as a person is a little bit more quirky than maybe the person next to me. But the person next to me has a trait that maybe I don't have innately, and I can't fake that. So, number one, when you are applying for a job, when you're creating your reel, you have to let your personality shine through. Because if you don't, a lot of times you can see right through someone who's trying to be someone that they're not. Um, Again, we talked. I hate bringing up my pageant past, but I think it's important when you're sitting in a judging room. 9 times out of 10, if you are trying to come off as somebody that you're not, they can see right through it. Whether it's in a judging room or whether it's in a boardroom where you are presenting something in front of the marketing team and why you would be the perfect person. So I just think preparation and being true to yourself are what has set me apart in a lot of the times that I'm auditioning. And the company that I have been working with recently, he said they got almost 800 applicants for the job that they were looking for on actorsaccess.com. And I stood out because of the way I said something in my audition. I can't even remember what it was. I wasn't perfect. I was a little bit more relatable, but at the same time, I was getting the point across that I needed to get across. So it all worked out, and you don't want to be cookie cutter at the end of the day. It's
Yeah.
not fun, and no one wants to watch that. They want to watch you.
I love that. This is so fascinating for me because I'm just like, ooh, you're dropping so many nuggets that I'm like, Juliana, if you're not sharing this on social media right now, I literally need to have you on another show because everything that you're hitting on, I'm like, I wonder if she has a checklist for that. And maybe it's just the marketer in me, but I'm like, that could totally be a podcast episode. That could totally. Have you thought about that? Like, are you now thinking about it? Because it's all there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I'm gonna
I
pull it out
should.
of you.
I
You're like, oh, it's over
And
here in my little card. It has all this stuff. And then a
well,
marketer
no,
like
you're
me would
right.
like, give me your checklist. I'll put it in Canva, make it super pretty. Then on your website, you have like this, hey, you want to learn like 10 ways for you to stand out in your next
Mhm.
audition. Da, da, da. And then once people fall in love with you and they like the content that you put out, it's like, okay, now book your mentoring, your 6 week coaching plan or something like that. Like
Have
that's where
you
my
talked
brain
to
went.
my husband? I feel like you and my husband have been in cahoots. He's a marketer too, and he says you need to get an ebook, but I need to listen to my own advice and get a little bit of confidence in that aspect because this is advice that I should be taking, and maybe you need to hear it too. When you know you have the capability to do something, but it's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, you say, I'll learn about it tomorrow. I'll make my reel tomorrow. I will look at those websites tomorrow. Well, the opportunity is going to pass you by. So perhaps I should look into that and use
Perhaps.
both of your
Did everyone hear
advice.
that? She said perhaps. You know what I find, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and usually I tell them it's not about like when you're going to learn it, it's about who you already know that knows how to do it. So kind of like when
Yeah.
you said that your friend had called you and said, "Hey, their daughter was interested in learning or being a part of the industry." You're like, "Oh, okay, well, here's what it is." So it's not necessarily how, but really like who you can reach out to. And I feel like I, for one, like we've been talking for a little bit now. I'm like, I have learned so much. And I'm like, where is this? Like, yeah, this is
It's on the
amazing.
phone with my girlfriends. I have a lot of people who, I'm a very welcoming person.
Yeah.
I just don't see the point in holding the knowledge that you have. So one on one, I have mentored a lot of people. I actually had one of my friends from the news is getting into the QVC HSN space. And she
Wow.
said, listen, I don't know if this is for me. I have an audition. I had 2 people do this actually, now that I think about it, in the past 2 months. And
See, you're in
I helped one
demand.
with the audition. And again, you need to ask for help because people want to share, they want to help you. So if you are struggling with like, I want to do this, but I don't know how to, like we are right now, which is a step that I need to take is ask for help because 9 times out of 10, the person is willing to share that knowledge. I helped someone create a contract. They're getting some great benefits with their job now that I didn't ask for when I signed a certain contract in a role that I'm in right now. But I want to help that person. It doesn't take anything away from me to help someone succeed and to help someone get their worth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do need to add that to my website.
Well, I'm excited for you. Okay, so we talked about sizzle reels and what actually makes a good sizzle reel. P.S. For those of you that are
Mhm.
watching, you're like, oh, is she talking about Instagram reels? No, we're talking about like sizzle reels that you would put in with
Yeah.
submissions.
Hmm.
So, from your perspective, what are brands looking for when they're looking in those submissions? Because you mentioned
Yeah.
by industry and making
Hmm.
sure that it's up to date, but are there other things where you're like, hey, like maybe you show like a grid that says how much revenue was made? I don't know. Like you tell me.
People don't want to be bored when they watch videos. When they're on social media, when they're on YouTube, when they are watching a movie, they don't want to be bored. And your reel needs to be engaging. It needs to be dynamic. It needs to show your personality. But it, more than all of that, needs to keep somebody's attention for even 30 seconds. So I love having a short sizzle reel. It's about 30 to 45 seconds where it's really quick, strong clips of me working. Number one, showing that you're working and showing that you can play to different audiences. You can have funny moments, you can have serious moments, you can have engaging moments where it's conversational. So, those types of things. And then you have a longer form reel, which I have seen, God bless them. I've had a couple women out of college who say, okay, can you look at my reel? I'm starting to submit to jobs. And they're 15 minutes long. And I can't even
Oh,
get through the first 30 seconds because they're so, so, so long. So for me, when I'm helping anybody edit or when I'm looking at my own reel, I look at, is the person going to smile? Is the person going to say, oh, I kind kind of know who Julianna is. Or are they going to say, why is this so long? I've been listening to the same thing for a minute. So keep all of your little clips to, I would say, 15 to 30 seconds max, and then move on to the next thing where it shows a different aspect of your personality. In all, though, your reel should not be over, I would say, 5 minutes. Mine right now, I have a long one that's 6, but it's because I pull different clips for, whatever I'm trying to do. But my main one is 3 minutes long, and then I have a 30-second one that I can just shoot out if I'm submitting to something. But it needs to be engaging. It needs to show your personality. It needs to show you doing different things. But Stephanie, maybe there's someone out there who is like, "What, I haven't worked. I need to create my own." I've helped people do that too. Go in different areas of your house. Borrow a nice camera, write a script, or transcribe a script that you've seen on e-news. I don't even know if they have entertainment news anymore. But a hosting situation where you say, "Oh, I could do that." Transcribe it, put it on a teleprompter or memorize it. Film yourself in 3 different areas of your house with a tripod, and that's your reel. No one needs to know that it wasn't a paid job, but it can show your different aspects of your personality, whether it be news, whether it be selling, you talking freely, or maybe you interview your friend. Get those moments, capture them, be prepared, and that can be your reel too. You need a starting point, and you need to, I said this over and over again, but you need to do a little bit of work in order to get some of the work that you want. And I've seen people out of college be very successful in doing that by putting in the effort to look professional and create their own reel out of nothing.
Oh, I'm so fascinated right now. How would, okay, so Sue Ann's here in the comments and she's saying, yes, Sue Ann, I do love helping people understand social and video marketing. Like that's my go-to. I mean, Julianna, you know this, where I'm like, hey, tell me about your gear. What's the best lighting and all that other jazz. And so I love that you pointed out things that you have in the sizzle reel. But how long is the sizzle reel actually supposed to be? Because you talked about the little clips. Is a sizzle reel actually like 15 seconds, or it's just a 15-second clip of that particular opportunity and then it goes to the next one? Is that what you mean?
I wish I had mine up. I'll have to send mine to you. Mine is about 45 seconds. So the one that I submit for, where it's like, okay, I think I have like 3 different clips in it, and it's super, super fast. So it's like, I would say 10 seconds a clip. So pick out your strongest moments where you look your best, you sound your best. It shows you in different scenarios, and that's your sizzle reel.
Like indoor, like, okay, sorry. So this is why I love talking to you. Like, so you say scenarios. So it's like indoor, outdoor, on set. I'm just guessing. Like literally, I'm just guessing right now. Oh, okay.
Whatever you want your brand to be. So for me right now, most of my reels consist of live selling situations, which I work with Wayfair. I work with L'Occitane. I work with a couple different companies in that aspect. So that is what my reel is all about, because those are the types of jobs that I'm typically submitting myself to. Yes. So maybe you do one where you have a news read and you're reading it like that, or an interview where, yes, you go outside in the street style, or you have more of I don't want to say a little bit more of a free conversation where you're ad-libbing a little bit more. It's just showing off what you can do.
This is exciting. I literally cannot wait for my team to get the video, transcribe it, put it into a blog post, and be like, Sue Ann, look at all these notes and all these different things, because you've dropped so much gold and like value bombs for us. I'm like so excited, and just to hear how you are paving the way for others and creating opportunities, because like you said, being an on-air shopping host gives you that freedom and that flexibility to do what it is that you want to do and work on the projects that you want to work on, which I think is so exciting. I love that you're so well-rounded in that if you needed to create a reel, you could do it, because hello, you're organized and you have all this insider knowledge. And I'm so thankful that you came back to the show to really just dive deeper into this. This has been fun.
Oh, and I appreciate you asking me, because, truth be told, I don't have notes or anything. I'm just telling you what I have done in the past.
Yeah.
Maybe it works for you. Maybe you take some nuggets. But I love people. I love seeing people succeed.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a lot of help because, and I was telling this to my mom, I was like, you know, would you have been able to help me get into TV? She could have gotten me into sales or real estate, but no
Yeah.
one in my community, my family, people that I knew, were in this line of work. So I like helping others because I didn't have a lot of people to help me. I needed to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
A lot of trial, a lot of error. And what is the use if I can't help just one person not make the same mistake that I made? Because with that user generated content, with all of these live streaming shows, there are so many jobs out there. And now to be a host isn't just to be on e-news, isn't just to be on Access Hollywood anymore. There are so many different avenues, and we've really redefined what it means to be a host these
Oh,
days.
yeah, the landscape has completely changed because
Mhm.
now I'm curious, do these same rules apply? Because, you come from the QVC background and newscasting, and you're now helping friends that have worked with the Home Shopping Network and TSC. Does the same thing apply for those that want to be live shopping hosts on livescale.tv or other live shopping platforms? Is it a different process, do you find, or in your experience?
I I don't think so. And part of that might just be my experience because I have experience in live selling with
Yeah.
teleprompter. So I've worked with a lot of different types of companies. So that may be why it works
Yeah.
in my world. But with live scale, you know, I had never done that before, but it was through another job I had done.
Yeah.
So a lot of times now companies are starting to see the value and how they can create these shows themselves, not have to go the QVC route. And maybe it's someone who works in the company and you say, hey, do you want to hop on and we're going to just try this? That's how it
Yeah.
worked for me with live scale. And it did really well the couple of times that we've done it. So
I love it. So
I don't know.
you talked about having your resume, your reel, your headshots. Do you also actively ask for testimonials? Like, do you reach back out to, I don't know if you call it like the casting director, but you're like, hey, how was I on this set? Like, would you recommend me? Are these things that you put on your website or
Oh,
no?
that's a great idea.
Okay. And I only
But that's
ask,
a really good idea.
yeah, the reason why I ask is because, so let's say for Ecamm, we had
Mhm.
Leap into Live Selling, and it was a summit. And I always have like this little checklist for me to do once the summit has ended. And once the summit has ended, I will reach out to the speakers who
Mhm.
volunteered their time to speak at the event and engage with their audience. And I'll go on LinkedIn and I'll write them a review. I'm like, hey, Juliana was a guest on the show and she dropped some amazing nuggets and da da da. And I wonder if that happens in your world too, or is it just not as common?
I think that's a fantastic idea. And it might be something I add to my checklist. Sometimes it can be awkward when you're the talent and you're like, okay, well, let's talk about me and my performance and everything. But when you are a casting person and you are led to somebody's reel or their website, what better way to learn about somebody and the work that they've done than by reading other people's words with
Yeah.
how they had done on paid jobs. I think that's a really good idea to set yourself apart. And it doesn't need to be after you work with every single client, but it is a really great idea to have a 5-star review that pops up in your reel where, we're listening and we're also reading at the same time. We're doing that anyways on social media.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really good idea.
I'll give you another idea. So here in San Diego, we have the American Marketing Association, and every year they'll have where local businesses can submit their creative work just to show how the San Diego advertising community is making an impact. And so oftentimes they'll ask us for case studies. So there are times where I've actually reached out to a brand and I'd say, hey, you know that live shopping event that I produced for you? How much revenue did we generate or how much
Yeah.
traffic did we get to the site? And it's helpful for me because then I could show, like, because we developed the run of show, here's a case study. That's what it means to work with me. Do you do case studies as well, or probably not even a thought? No?
I do get numbers.
Okay.
and it would be very helpful to share. I do know I have a lot of friends who are content creators, and I'm trying to, I think they call them media kits, where
Yeah.
they have, their audience, the demographics,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how much they make with certain partnerships and things like that. That is helpful to hire them.
Yeah.
And all of those jobs are kind of starting to bleed together because it's so social media oriented. And a lot of brands now, maybe a content creator is great with a picture, but maybe they would look to a host to speak a little bit more eloquently about
Yeah.
a product or something in the brand. So maybe media kits are something that would also be really helpful in the hosting world, working with businesses, because I do see those numbers with QVC,
Yeah.
with Canada, with Live Scale. And I'm always really happy. And a lot of times those numbers can benefit my pay increase at the end of a job too.
Yeah.
Um,
Here's another question for you. And I heard the little one. I thought that was so cute. um, so we've talked about like live shopping in China before. And what I'm finding that the trend there is that now you have these successful on-air shopping hosts and they'll
mhm.
build a relationship with the brand where not only are they getting paid for their time, but they also get commission on sales. Is that common in the US as well or no?
That's what I helped someone with on their contract
Okay,
recently.
what?
I
Okay,
said,
seriously? Like
this
Juliana,
is
you have like
your this is your likeness. You're putting your time in. Maybe they make 100K. You're getting paid the same amount. That doesn't really make sense because it's
yeah.
you putting that effort in. You are doing all of the selling. And so, yeah, I say ask for the commission when you can. And Stephanie, my husband and I just watched the Nike movie last night, Air.
I haven't watched it yet.
It's so good. But Michael Jordan was the very first. He and his mom asked for shares in revenue when his name was on a shoe. And that changed the entire athlete brand partnerships because they started realizing we're taking advantage of these athletes. They're not getting
Mm-hmm.
paid for selling these shoes. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does.
obviously
It does.
I'm very
It's
into Michael Jordan right now because he changed so much when it came to selling and when it came to those brand relationships. So yeah, when you're working with brands, if your face, your likeness, your effort goes behind it, if you can work into commission, if you're selling something, I think that makes sense.
no, it does make sense. Juliana, like you don't understand. Like my brain right now is like I'm devising this whole marketing plan for you right now. I'm like, that would have been like a really cool TikTok video just talking about how influencer relationships has changed over and you could start off with like Michael
Mhm.
Jordan did this with his mom. Just imagine what it would do for you.
Yeah.
And like I could see you even doing a webinar that just says like five mistakes most on-air hosts make when applying for a job. And then you could say like, so when you're on backstage, this is what you should be doing or da 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 da. These are the things that you should put in a reel. Like you have a book. You have a
Yeah.
book inside of you. And I'm like, I just want to like get it out of you. Like, yeah, come out.
Oh, I love that. And again, once that hard work is done and figuring things out, we reap the benefits and it becomes easier afterwards. So I think that's a really fantastic idea. And there's lots of mistakes that are made that don't reflect who you are. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you can get beat down in this industry of the TV, the entertainment world, where it's like, well, I'm not good enough. Well, maybe you are, you're just not putting yourself out there the right way. Maybe
Mm,
you can elevate things, take a little bit more of a chance, show yourself a little bit more, and then the doors can start opening. But there are lots of mistakes that are just common. Maybe you just think that's what they want to see. Where, like I said before, people just don't want to be bored when they're watching videos, when they are going through a casting process, too. It's like you see hundreds of people. What makes someone stand out is like making the person laugh or,
yeah.
just being not so perfect. Um, but
No, I love it.
That's what I've found.
This is so much fun. I'm so excited to see what's going to happen, let's say in the next 6 months, because there's just so many ideas. And I think you could even make that like an evergreen course, evergreen webinar of just, this is how long I've been in the industry. And then you show your credentials. This is what I've done. Da, da, da. This is how I've helped people. And here's a checklist for you or whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
But my suggestion to you is the next time you have a friend that calls you with questions, ask them if you could record it, because those are the questions that people want to know. And unless you've created like a blog post or some type of like lead magnet that says top 10 frequently asked questions about what it means to be an on-air host, or getting your child started in the industry, these are some things to consider. Like, no joke, I was walking my little girl to school today and she's like, Mommy, what should I be when I grow up? And I was like, you could be whatever it is that you want to be. And I was telling her, I was like, but actually your first job is going to be a content creator. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, you're going to do some unboxing videos, because every birthday you get a whole slew of toys and I just need you to do a review.
So cute. And Stephanie, we talked again off air about, who would have thought that what you or I are doing right now was possible when we were younger. We're just figuring it out. And now there's a space that is brand new, that's so flexible, where the opportunities are just endless. And I think it's really an exciting place to be. And why wouldn't you want to help other people figure it out? Because you and I know as moms, it can be really hard to make that choice to, what do you want to do where you have time with your child, or, all these things. And I've been able to, thank goodness, do what I love, do what I feel like I was called to do. And my, what I'm good at, really, speaking off the cuff. And I'm also able to be present. So the hosting world is a really cool space right now.
My gosh. You're like the hostess with the mostest. All the goodies, all the knowledge.
No, because I don't get every job, but
that's okay.
The thing is, I've been doing a little bit of what I'm doing right now for 15 years, and seen a lot of the broadcasting world, seen a lot of the TV, a lot of the live streaming change so drastically in the past 5 years, I would say. And a lot of people don't stick it out. And it's possible to be able to create your space, to be able to say no to opportunities, to be able to explore other opportunities and find out what else is out there. And there's just so many platforms now to have that space.
I love it. All right, Julianna, you've been absolutely amazing. You got to tell the rest of the crew, you got to tell Hank, you got to tell Sue Ann, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you and all the wonderful knowledge that you have to offer?
And we talked about live. You heard my little one run around upstairs. Things aren't perfect, and that's the magic of live anything. You can find me on social media at Julianna R. White, on Instagram. Facebook is at Julianna White, and juliannawhite.com. You can contact me or see one of my longer formed reels that I probably need to switch out right now after having to take my own advice. But I'm very accessible on social media, especially.
Very cool. I mean, that was one question I was going to ask you. So does this sizzle reel, does it live on other websites like YouTube, or do you just keep it underneath your, I don't know, your desk drive?
Unlisted.
It's unlisted.
Yeah, I keep them, well, on YouTube, mine is unlisted. I like keeping that private and being able to submit it. On my website, my longer form one is available, but I just use iMovie, really.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said that.
All of my.
I love that you make
easy.
it so simple, because some people would be like, oh, now I got to make my own scissor reel and I have to learn like Final Cut Pro and all these other things. And Sue Ann, you're probably like me. You're maybe like playing around with Descript or CapCut. For me, that's easier. I need to show you Descript. I think you would absolutely love it.
I think that's what we used it in the news.
Descript?
Descript is so familiar, and I don't know why. That's what I'm like.
I'll send it to you because Descript.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, it automatically takes out the filler words in your videos without. messing up the video, which is really nice because sometimes when I have
Maybe
interviews,
you told me about it last time.
maybe, yeah, I probably should. I do those things sometimes. I'm like, oh, here's resources. I'll throw it at you. But that's okay, cool. This is awesome. I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 6 months. Everyone, if you're interested in learning more about on-air hosting, she's obviously the pro. Go talk to her. She's got some amazing tips, tricks, and all these different things. People are coming to her, so before you have to wait in line, make sure that you get on her calendar and go from there. Julianna, this has been amazing. I appreciate you so much. It's
I
so much fun having
appreciate
you on the show.
you. I know. I love talking to you. And if we didn't cover anything else, then let's do it again because I always have
No,
fun.
honestly, we should actually just have a show that just talks about on-air shopping, the trends, things that you learn, and
There's so
maybe we
much.
could even have someone that just says like, "Hey, can I promote my opportunity on your show?" I'm like, "Sure, come on, here you go. Here's a sponsorship." See, this is how my brain works.
Thinking forward of the next thing, I love it. And I would love to be a part of it. So I appreciate talking to you. Thanks for
All
having me.
right. Thank you so much, Julianna. Take care. And to everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. Talk to you later.